before, where you could walk into a gallery, and if you connect that gallery to your wallet, then your stuff is there in that gallery. You'll be able to see it. You'll be able to have it read, like you can have a voice actually read the haiku, or play the sound from it as well as the visual of it, and so forth. And so imagine in a metaverse, there'll be some utilitarian things as far as competition and contest, but you'll be able to display them and feature them, and put them in collections. And I would say maybe an easy word to sort of understand is decorate with them and so forth.
Uh-huh. Yeah, totally. And are you guys launching on multiple chains, or is it are you just gonna be on Lamina1 to
We're
start?
exclusively Lambda right
Awesome.
now. So, um, again, I think that as things develop with both Lamina and us, that will be probably something that will, as a group, as a community, decide where else we take it.
Yeah, totally. And so, I mean, in general, like, I mean, it sounds like you've got a bunch of early fans even here, sort of already ideating, creating feedback and stuff in the chat. Y'all are great. But what do you kind of hope that users kind of like take away from the experience with Haiku on Lamina1? Like, what exactly, like, what types of thoughts, inputs, and sort of like engagement are you kind of hoping for in these early days with us?
Yeah, well, like I said, we definitely want to involve people in sort of the proof testing of the experience itself. We're going to do an experience with a minimized set of traits, so that we're not showing the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So that we can refine that experience and make that experience as high quality as possible, as interesting and engaging as possible. Um, and I think that also, again, how developing not just the like the gamification of the assets after the generation, but then
Mhm.
how these assets will be used in you know other projects and metaverses and spaces and stuff like that. That I think, because everybody wants to be able to like use these things, right? And in fact, it's too hard to be prescriptive about all the possible way these things can be used now. It needs to be sort of like community driven, and opportunity with collaboration driven about how these things can be utilized in metaverses, spaces, other gamifications, products, other content creations, right? Other pieces of content that could make use of the content from this.
Yeah, for sure. Got a question from earlier in the day from Ed Keys, who asks, is it possible for users to like override the AI for poem generation step? Like if I just want to write my own haiku, but then put the rest of the art and blockchain stuff like on chain and like have you take care of that, is that an option, or is that like an idea that you think is interesting, I guess?
It's an interesting idea, but
Yeah,
it would violate sort of like the uniqueness aspect of this,
yeah,
right? Because
sure.
the various steps that we undertake in the process to maintain the uniqueness, although it allows the user to uniquely select the traits, not the actual haiku formulation itself, right? Because
Mhm.
then someone could by hand sort of tweak the haiku to be extraordinarily, similar, or you know, trivially non-unique from one of the other haikus, which would sort of violate this whole uniqueness thing that
Yeah.
we're undergoing. So it's interesting to discuss. I mean, we have ideas for next generation. It's so hard not to run ahead, run wild with more ideas we have for another generation of these things and so forth. And that's certainly something we'd love to hear about, like these kinds of suggestions. And then, and we might not have the perfect way, we might not have the perfect thinking about how to incorporate some of these ideas in future generations and utilizations. And again, that's the beauty of like the community engagement and hearing these ideas. Some just have to be tested against the process and the ideals we're trying to maintain for this experience, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Killen asked too, like speaking of like kind of future ideas, like is there anything on your guys' roadmap or that you guys are thinking about to kind of like expand past short form writing and sort of like help storytellers maybe expand those writings or ideas, or like, expand that original haiku into like a longer story. Also asks, like, is the LLM being used for haiku even a good idea for longer form generation of works? Like, I know
Well,
you, yeah.
it's very interesting that that's questions asked, because it's something we've been asking and discussing and looking at, and it's part of our thinking in like future generations, right? Because if you think about it, the way these are being created, it's content being built up on top of content being built up on top of content, and we use the
Mhm.
user as the source of the traits, right? But then haiku is generated, and then the haiga is generated, and certainly there's a universe where like a longer story could be generated, right?
Yeah.
From from the haiku or the haiga or the combination, or maybe go back to the traits, right?
Yeah.
Or what have you. And you I don't know if you know what a Zen cone is, but um, there's an opportunity for that sort of thing. And again, and actually the question that's been asked is really actually quite pertinent, and that is like, and it's part of what's been interesting about our discovery is like, because there's always the chance that like, oh, it's not good at it, like the haikus aren't any good, or the images really aren't very engaging. We found the opposite. We found that it's shockingly creative and elegant. Is the word I would use, what's produced. And with what we've architected in with the agents, it's quite good at conforming. I know that sounds like a really scientific word,
Mm.
but I mean that in an artistic way, conforming, not just a mechanical way of conforming. It's like really good at conforming to the structure of haikus, and the instruction we give it as far as like the style, and what we want in it, and what makes it engaging and appealing. But um, yeah, absolutely. I see someone asked quickly about other languages planned,
Yeah.
and that too, right? And so the answer in short is yes. But again,
Mm.
so hard not to want to jump ahead, because this haikus are a Japanese thing, and really our version of haikus, well, not ours, but like the world accepted version of English haikus are a transformation of that,
Yeah.
um, from Japanese to English, because of the differences between Japanese and English. And I worked in Japan for quite a bit, and have some background in that. There are missing linguistic elements between the two, and unique things to both languages. And I would say that English haikus have things that Japanese haikus don't have. And so we definitely intend to reformulate the reformulation. Certainly, we hope that the engagement of the community will want to drive that,
Mhm.
and so we'll want to do things in, definitely, I think, Japanese, um,
Mhm.
uh, but other languages as well, where it's suited, where communities say, we'd love to see these things in our language. And it'll be interesting because you go from like traits in English language, and they'll map to like things in Japanese language. So the traits won't be exactly the same in each language. It'll be different. We'll probably, I imagine that we'll aim to do that, to make sure the trait selections are different in each language. So that
Mhm.
will by nature make them different, but then that'll lead to like, of course, different haikus in the different language. But then I think that will even have enormous impact on the stylistic creation of the haigas, and maybe even how they're used, and what else they can be used to create.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know you didn't want us to back you into like talking about the exact model, but Erasmus did ask like a question like, so of the models I guess you are experimenting with, like, how are they trained? Are they like trained from existing haikus to become like total haiku experts? Like, um, I thought that
Well,
was a
the
question.
answer to that is yes, right? In the
Yeah.
sense that like whenever, and I don't want to turn this into like a lecture on AI and so forth, but the interesting thing about AIs is people often think of them as a non-human type intelligence. I don't like that because we only had one thing to train AIs with, and that's our knowledge, right? Like we
Mhm.
built AIs. I don't think there's a conspiracy theory out there that someone dropped them off here, or told people how to make them somebody from somewhere else. So we only had human samples of things to train them with, because they are trained with samples.
Yeah.
Visual models are trained with samples of images, and language models are trained with text or language, and there are hybrid models and so forth. And in there, even in the base models, never mind our agents and our content from so forth, um, we definitely there's references to existing content, right? Like, and we also do this reinforcement learning thing, where it's like, here's what works, right? So you can retrain the model, or direct the model by showing it good and bad examples of the content. And again, we use not to get too detailed, but like an agentic system, where like an agent will like reflect on the creation and make sure that it conforms, as I said, or adheres to the process and so forth. But what's interesting is that, again, because again, if there's people in here who've been following AI,
Fulvio?
um, it changes very quickly. What the core base model is, and how well it runs and how it functions. That changes very, very quickly, and I have no doubt that at very least we'll be considering changing some of our in progress decisions that we've made between now and uh, when the set will be generated.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the
Um,
things I can add to the conversation around the training is that one of the goals for this project is to have this as the training set for what the next iteration of our project can be.
oh, cool.
Yeah, by contributing, and not just in the generation, but even in the trading, right? Like if certain haikus become really valuable, that becomes like a data
Hmm.
point we can use for training other iterations, or the versions for another language, or for our agentic system that generates these things. It's so you can think of it on a lot of levels, how it will evolve, right?
Yeah. That's really funny. That actually kind of taps into like Erasmus's other, I think, kind of like musing prolific question, but it's like, what actually makes a good haiku in the first place? Like, right? Like, I'm sure you guys have read more haikus than probably anyone here, like working on this project. But yeah, I think it's interesting. It's like, yeah, understanding, like letting people test it out and see, like, you know, almost like, through this project and through this sale, we can pull out like, wow, this one was really successful. I wonder why. Like, super
and,
Speak
and
to
interesting.
that.
people have different understandings of that, or different
Yeah.
evaluations of that, right? There's a piece of it that's like, again, I like to think of it as the conforming piece. Like, does it follow the rules? Does it have the elements, that are like the guideline? But then, how much emotion it elicits from you, or you know, a the quality determination is very subjective, right? And
Yeah.
some people like a certain kind of thing, and some people, other things really resonate with. So
Yeah. I've always loved the like unexpected metaphor that can really be brought up in haiku as well. Like where you're seemingly talking about something really simple, but then, it's a double entendre for something a lot more prolific. I mean, that's such a like that's always my favorite part about like a good haiku kind of talks on both of those levels, right? Um, kind of the whole
What
point of the art form in the first place.
one of the neat things about the haiku is how much it can compress into a very short form. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that we're working to do in terms of the experience is provide people the opportunity to be ready for that message, and
Hmm.
and to accept it in a way where they will connect with it on their own. But it is a really brief and emotional message that you get if you're in the right mindset for it. And so that was one of the neat things. You already brought up multimedia, and so that is one of the key aspects that we're adding to this experience is
Yeah. Yeah,
trying
definitely.
to harmonize with the experience of a haiku in the process of making one.
Hmm. Very cool. Um, let's see. Someone also asked, like, is there going to be an ability to like copy or riff off of potentially poignant haikus, or I guess like kind of this kind of goes into the next steps, but yeah, it looks like someone's like, could you copy particularly poignant ones to monetize works, or like, is there any sort of idea on like secondary sales or derivatives or anything? Have you guys thought about any of that yet, or is it still, I
Oh,
mean,
we've toyed with all sorts of ideas, and again, we really love the community
yeah.
interaction on that. I mean, I'll share one with you. Who knows how much people like it? But if you were thinking about throwing up like a, a in real world an IRL minting page where you can, if you have the haiku in your wallet, can you print out an on-demand scroll that's shipped to you that you can hang on your wall, right? Of the
Mm,
haiku, and things like that. And you can think of a million things like that, right? Like a coffee mug or T-shirt or what have you. I think the interesting questions are really around in digital experiences kind of thing.
mhm,
Um, but I think that's to come, right? I think, like I
yeah.
said, I really want to engineer that along with the community and figure out the best ways to enable who the owner of the haiku is with that
Um,
with that asset, so to speak.
Mhm. Amazing. Well, I think we've got about 9 minutes left. I'll probably close this out. This has been such a great talk. Thank you guys so much for coming on. Atomic 47 team, also everyone who's been super active in the chat and sharing ideas and everything. I mean, obviously, this is like why we wanted to bring the Atomic 47 and Haiku team on now, is like we were like, yeah, like let's start testing and experimenting and doing stuff with our community now. So yeah, as we mentioned in the announcement earlier this week, obviously, like this partnership is a bunch of content and infrastructure updates we're going to be releasing over the coming weeks in the lead up to Spaces, and that sort of Neil Stevenson artifact experience that's kind of going to be debuting. Um, and yeah, as I kind of mentioned, I mean, I'm just going to drop a link for folks who might be new here or need a refresher. We've done a little bit of talking about like what spaces are. We've got a little section in the L1 users and developers guide that kind of talks about them. And I'm going to share you guys like a little sneak peek at like what this feature is potentially going to look like. Again, this should look kind of familiar to some folks who have been doing early testing, but I'm dropping a little screenshot in the chat. This is a mock-up, just kind of like showing some of the main features. But kind of sharing this here with you guys just to kind of showcase like these are going to be places where like spaces are going to collect content from across all different genres. Think gaming experiences, social, everything from, entertainment, like haiku writing projects, like all of that. It's going to be compiling stuff across multiple formats. So, still images, video, and also kind of serve as an entry point to external access points. So basically being able to use your LAMINA1 account to sign into, browser-based experiences, or downloadable applications. Folks who have been kind of testing on LAMINA1 will realize that they've tested some of these integrations, maybe unwittingly with, space lasers or that NIRIC test that we did in BetaNet. That authentication is built and will allow us, and I mean, think of them generally as like these landing pages though that are designed so that projects can kind of provide and host updates. They can mint and like kind of drop content directly in their feed that people can mint from right there. We've got token gating, obviously. That sort of like L1 early access pass was actually an early test of that feature and functionality, where we wanted to show like, how can we token gate access to different Discord groups or through to various like even contest posts or spaces based on NFT holdings that you have. Infrastructure is built for that. And then also interesting co-creation tools, whether that's, using the Haiku interface We did some previous experiments with Forecast, that sort of AI gen, like kind of custom model for storytelling. They're chatting with us about kind of having a template for that. And yeah, the idea is that like, you know, at first we're going to launch it with Artifact to kind of show people what they can do with spaces. Then we're going to have a bunch of partners like Haiku and some other marquee flagship folks who are going to be debuting spaces on the LAMINA1 platform that kind of showcase how this feature can work in various different kind of like arenas. And then, you know, ultimately open up this spaces functionality to the entire L1 community so that, you know, y'all can start building story worlds there and sort of start, you know, organizing drops and kind of linking out collectibles to, you know, external experiences that you're building. It's really exciting. I cannot wait to get this feature out and have you guys poke around. So yeah, and I think in general, you know, if you're interested in launching a space or think this feature set is super interesting or want to kind of come on for an AMA even to talk about your project, please fill out the form that I just popped in the chat. As I mentioned, I have this like new kind of thing where we're looking for a bunch of projects to throw grants to and start kind of like kicking the tires on these experiences. And, you know, the Haiku team is one of the recipients of those grants. And, you know, if you've got something that you're interested or a space that you think could be really cool, like definitely reach out to us in the next couple of weeks. And again, get ready for some more AMAs, community and partner spotlights like this as we gear up for that big launch. Erasmus, just fill it out again. I actually revamped it for this process. This was actually our old early access form, but I revamped it because, you know, with a couple of different criteria. So yeah, if you filled out forms before, I would just recommend that you fill them out again. We've got some more partnership help on the team as of the new year that we're being a lot more diligent about kind of checking those feeds. So definitely, yeah, take a look. I actually have already spoken to CD, but yeah, 100%. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining. Again, thank you so much, Atomic 47 team. Seriously cannot wait to continue building this out with you. Stay tuned for more Haiku updates and stuff in their project thread as we continue building. And thank you all so much. Take care and happy Friday, everyone. All right. Talk to you later.
Happy Valentine's Day too.
Yeah, you too, guys.